John Michael.
Matthew.
Here we are.
Here we are. Here we are. At the very beginning. Yeah.
The beginning of all things.
Beginning of today, anyway. What's rocking your boat? What's rocking your boat?
Well, as the fall weather has been approaching, I've been finding myself linked into the sort of inquiry of what can I let go of? Like the leaves on a tree. What can I shed in this moment in time?
Well, that was something right there. I have to use a little.
Yeah, that's been an inquiry for me for the last week or so. We've got an eclipse coming up on Saturday. Did you know that?
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's another time of sort of bringing light into the darkness, discovery, uncovering various things to be perhaps let go of from the shadow.
Are you going to go watch it?
Definitely going to engage in it in some way. I don't know about watch it so much as I have some ritual I'd like to do. I mean, you know, a solar eclipse always falls on the new moon, and the new moon is often seen within the esoteric lens as a place to set intentions, right? And an eclipse having all the more energy behind it, it's a greater place to set intentions. So I think I've been setting my eyes on what I'd really like to create coming in this upcoming season of fall and winter. And I'm excited about the new spaces that I get to jump into. A lot of collaborative spaces. Yeah,
me too. It's to hear you say fall is a nice reminder. As I looked out the window today, I could see leaves starting to turn on an aspen tree right out here, quaky, leaves are fluttering, and I feel a little resistant, I have to say. Like, there's a lot that's feeling spring-like in me right now. There's a lot that's about launching. So I think my seasons happen in shorter cycles, not necessarily related.
Well, the funny thing is, I'm a Libra rising, okay? So my first house is in Libra, which is in the opposite sign of the first house itself's ruler, which is Aries, right? So the Aries-Libra axis is an interesting balance. So this is my springtime in astrological sense. This is a time where seeds are just starting to bud, not bud, but emerge from the ground, that first sign of the sapling emerging. And I really feel that in my life right now. I feel, I'd be curious, do you know your rising sign?
I knew you were going to astrology.
Yeah, no, I don't want to put you on the
last girlfriend gave me a detailed reading. Let me go pull it up.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to go down the land of woo, but it's interesting.
I knew it a minute ago before you asked me.
Yeah, I'm sure you.
I did. It's like right there.
Okay.
I'll let you know if it comes through.
It'll come back.
If it rises.
What's your rising sign? Yeah. So maybe, I don't know. Perhaps you have something similar in that regard. I mean, you know, we all have different seasons, and they may not line up with the seasons of
Libra, I think.
Yeah.
This is Libra, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is your rising?
I think. Damn it. Okay.
If it is, that would make
Can we
perfect
start
sense.
this over again? I'll go get my chart.
We'll put it in post.
I think it is.
So you have the same situation, which is Libra rising is what I was just describing. Is that if you are in fact a Libra rising, our seasons are actually opposite. So our fall is our spring is our fall. And in that respect, it would not be surprising that you feel this spring-like energy, and it's interesting because you can feel the difference between your outside world and your inside world, right?
I don't feel like I just went through a real fall, a real harvest.
Yeah.
With the project that we took to Unison, the Trust Lab, it was a real harvest. So out of that, new seeds are being planted, and I'm not going to ignore those through the winter.
Yeah. What's the most exciting, most vibrant seed that you have in store, or if it feels like it's able to be shared? Sometimes we lose the chi on things if we talk about it too early, so I don't want to invite that.
Yeah. I've got a couple right now. One is in minor play, meaning it'll be a shorter term harvest, and but it's an exploratory for things that might be to come. And it's somewhere between the personal and the public. This first one is going to be more on the personal side, but it's a sensual dining experience. Super slow, sexy supper club.
I believe.
Don't tell anybody about it because it's
this will come out afterwards.
Okay, good. This is a beta test.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about that because it brings a lot of elements. Eros is very much alive for me in my life, and kind of the tantric approach that all, God through all things, realization through all things, and theater, and so this is going to be a mix between the sensual experiences with some sense deprivation and mischief and theater and collaboration. Everybody's a part of it. Everyone will have an opportunity to contribute and be contributed to. So it has a mix of some of the things that I love.
Yeah.
The bigger project is an online course that I'll say this much about it because there'll be multiple parts to it. Foundations of Intimacy is the bigger holding piece, and the first part will probably be a taste of that, called Opening to Intimacy.
Okay.
And my challenge in this is to bring the somatic learning through Zoom. And I'm deciding to do it online for a couple of reasons. One is, reaching more people and reaching people around the world.
Yeah. And
for me, it's a bit of a breakthrough from thinking that if I have something worthwhile, that the people who are closest to me, both geographically and relationally, are the ones who are going to show up to it. And our success with Trust Lab at Unison Festival just showed me the different shapes, sizes, and colors of people who are showing up for it that really, really want it. And some of the people I know the best or thought this is perfect for them weren't there. So it's like, it's time to just put it out there in a bigger way in the world and reach out there. Also, we have different times, like we were just talking about, of being ready to pop or move towards something or claim it, draw it in. So I'm really going to be focused on those whose longing is alive for deeper levels of intimacy, and they're ready to move into the practices, the language, and the insights that can come from being in a course of study around that.
Yeah, I love that. I see, what is the proverb? When the student is ready, the teacher will arrive?
Yeah, what's occurring for me is when the teacher's ready, because I've been in such a resistance of doing things live.
Yeah.
So I'm really in like the reverse of that. When the teacher is ready, the students will show up.
Yeah. Well, there's that reciprocal space of, yeah. So I am, do you have it worked out as to how you will bring the somatic experience, bring the intimate experience across the ether in this Zoom experience. I think that would be like, I just my own mind finds that really challenging.
I wish I did.
Yeah.
In its entirety.
Yeah.
But I'm afraid I'm going to be going into this with a good idea of pieces of it.
Yeah.
But also some unknown.
Yeah.
What I don't know, to be discovered.
Yeah.
We all have the ability to feel beyond ourselves, and even with our eyes closed. And I have a fair amount of experiences. I can feel when I've worked with clients online or by phone without even having a visual.
Yeah.
I'll sometimes ask, is your body doing this? And it's usually a pretty good sense. We have a sense of when somebody's slumping or contracting.
Yeah.
Right? And it can be an inquiry. A lot of what I do, as you know, is in partner practices. So I haven't worked that out yet. Like, it would be to an advantage if somebody had someone in their household or nearby who would agree to some practices.
Yeah, I mean, my mind says that feels like the way that it would have to work out. Otherwise, I feel like you're mostly working with theory, and theory can be hard to.
Well, there's a lot we can do in solo practice. There's a lot, and there's a lot to be done in partner practice.
Yeah.
I haven't reconciled the partner practice part of it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot we can do with tuning with ourselves and noticing.
Yeah.
And I haven't translated it all.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to explore that maybe off camera more. Whereas, not to put you on the spot and having the creative experience in front of an audience.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I think I'll do before I take it out in a bigger course is do some work with clients online and beta test some of these things.
Yeah. Because I feel like something that's come up for me and sort of one of my desires through the Playground of Potential has been twofold: to have the online element, but also have a traveling element to it.
Yeah.
Where we take these modalities and workshops on the road and bring it to the people, right? And I feel like that's where the juiciness really would lie within my own scope, right? The somatic practices of bringing the somatics to the people, right? And I'm also intrigued and interested to see how the somatics can translate in an online course.
And maybe it is a requirement to do it with a partner. And it doesn't have to be a romantic partner, but just two people.
Workshop.
Find somebody who wants to do this with you.
Your accountability buddy.
Accountability buddy. Yeah, so that's a little bit of my challenge. That's a little bit of the teacher getting ready so the students will show up, is getting past the idea that how much I love working with people in person.
Yeah.
And, I'll do what we can do online, and then there'll be some opportunities for doing in-person work.
Yeah. Very cool.
That's what's alive for me.
I'm excited to see that come to fruition.
Yeah. What's popping with you?
On
the Playground of Potential.
The Playground of Potential is always popping. Well, I just had a preliminary offer of from a creative endowment, collaborative endowment known as 222, based out of Hawaii. Yeah. To potentially become the director of the Theater of the Arts here in Taos, of the 222 Foundation.
Wow.
So I'm incredibly excited about that.
Wow.
And it feels like the perfect opportunity for this moment. so it's looking like monthly performances that would be potentially, funded through this organization, and I get to bring all my buddies and friends into the collaborative space
Yeah,
to
wow.
dream up these ideas. And
Any particular venue or whatever particular venue?
well, I have close links with the Wildflower Theater, although we're not bound to any venue necessarily. Bill, the head director of 222, suggested, if we had a performance we'd like to do at a festival or that sort of thing, this would be another opportunity to do that as well. So I think it'll take many looks,
You'll be needing writers, directors of some of these.
Are you offering your talents?
I have ideas.
Yes, of course. We're gonna, we'll dream together. I think that's the big goal of 222, is really uniting the artistic community and the creative community. And I'm just incredibly excited to see all the ways that it'll come together. And so look forward to a meeting invitation for that. It'll happen in the near future. And
Wow, beautiful.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Absolutely. Aside from that, I find myself in a similar space outlining courses of study, that's what my passion is. What gets me going is the sharing of knowledge, and I have a number of workshops coming up, at least 2 coming up in the next.
I saw that you're taking men to the river.
I do intend to have a men's group. It's not come to fruition fully yet, but
a little cold immersion.
Yeah, a little cold immersion, coupled with the strengthening and support of bringing the bonds of brotherhood together in the community. I'm excited to see what we can create together and how we can support one another in the community. That's a big role.
Could use it here in our little town.
Absolutely. I think one of the aspects of Taos that is both a blessing and a curse is that there's a keen sense of independence here, right? And everyone, on their own journey of, self-discovery.
Especially when the snow flies.
Absolutely, yeah. And, it's a beautiful thing, and it has such rich medicine within it. And at the same time, what feels like can sometimes be lost is that the connection, the community that brings people together. And I also want to see the synergy of it, right? We become greater than the sum of our parts when we come together, and one thing that I feel like men put towards a goal can accomplish, men and women, doesn't matter, but there is the psychological framework that men tend to come together more readily around a goal rather than simply to gather around speech or sharing of and I want to explore that and really see what we can dream up for our community and for our individual support system of how we can support our brothers. What are our brothers going through in this community, and how can we as a group support the individual, and then as we lift one another up, how can we come together and lift our community up in that greater level of support and beyond our community, beyond that, you know.
I like the feel of that.
Yeah.
I had when I was up in Colorado, we had a men's group, and a theme for us was Men for Others. And we never got to like a community project, but there was that sense that we were ready for that. And what I mean by that is sometimes the community presents projects, things happen.
Yeah.
They can be natural disasters, they can, you know,
Yeah.
be something going on, like, you know, showing up. And we can go out and show up as individuals or create a project together.
Yeah.
But I like this concept.
Yeah.
Possibly the idea of a project together.
Yeah.
You know, it just occurred to me, like, I lived on land 2 summers ago, and one of the projects we created on the land, there were actually 2 spaces, one for men under a grandfather tree and another for women. There was like a nest. And so it was built from fallen timbers and branches. And there was a circle of trees, and around that it was woven, so it was actually a nest about that high, where the women would meet and feel safe in the woods. It was a beautiful thing. So yeah, that's just coming to me as a thought about a project that is in the woods, or a place to go, and you know, maybe it's a gathering space for men in the woods. As a starting point.
That brings me back to my childhood, the creation of forts.
Yes. Yeah.
That's alive. Yeah. I mean, there was nothing better. I mean, I remember our neighborhood was an ever-expanding neighborhood at the time that I was a kid. So we would go a little ways into the woods, and because of all the construction going on in the area, there would be just full of scrap wood that we could use to create. And then so we would create forts, and then they would expand the neighborhood into the woods that we had created our fort, and it would get torn down, but that would just create new opportunities.
Right.
By the 3rd iteration of this, we had a 3-story fort deep in the woods that had a crow's nest, like 25 feet in the air. It was truly a work of art.
Wow. I imagine supported by trees.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious, you know, looking at the elements of what a fort is about, right?
Yeah.
First of all, it's building things. It's a camaraderie, doing something together.
Yeah.
But these, the common elements, when I think back to forts I built, it was about being held, creating a sense of being held. We built one that was a series of tunnels, actually a couple. One was in a hay loft. You know, it was straw, because hay is way too itchy, but we would deconstruct the bales, so there were tunnels and places to go, and there was like a place that you could dive into and disappear. And it was all based on the idea that some imaginary enemy or adult
Right.
would come looking for us. We'd just and then tunnel, and we'd never be found. We also did one in the ground where we created ditches.
Yeah.
And then covered it with boards. They covered that with dirt and grasses. So they had this underground.
I love it.
But every fort, and the tree forts, was about being held.
Yeah.
And then I love the lookout. It was also like, you know, could you look out somehow, whether it was a peephole or your
the crow's nest,
to know what was coming.
Yeah. Well, fort comes from the word fortification, right? To defend, and a structure that defends, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fortitude.
Strength. Yeah.
So I wonder, you know, as adults, as men,
Yeah.
what creates that, how we create that for ourselves. We now can work with energy, but also is there something about, well, there's the, what do they call them, the man cave, out there. I'm trying to think if I ever had a man cave, but yeah, I wonder about that. Like is it a place in the woods? Is it having that sense of being held? Is it that we are the wall? We are now the walls as we sit in circle with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like a place of fortification would allow for those within it to be as vulnerable as they could be, right? Because there is this greater sense of container, right? And I feel like when there is this feeling of, feeling safe within a container, to be vulnerable, and to be, authentic in a way that could present, has up until this point, has been inaccessible because there were threats, right? There are threats to that needed to be met with rough, tough exteriors, right? And yeah, there's been a curiosity in me growing in as our culture evolves to where the enemy is no longer outside, right? Like, or at least not
for the most part.
Yeah, bearing down at the walls at this moment, right? Does that give us access to deeper opportunities of vulnerability and fuller access to ourselves, access to areas that may have been walled off because of necessity? I think of like generations, perhaps my grandparents' generation, of the necessity of toughness and exterior, will to that didn't allow for what I see as an opportunity within the generation's mind, in particular, and the younger generations, but where it is now an opportunity to get vulnerable, right? Like to be in those spaces of, well, now I can actually look at my emotions and it feels safer,
It's an interesting concept. Like it has to be discovered and has to be felt in the muscles and bones. But this idea that vulnerable is actually safer.
Yeah.
I think of a boxer. This is the, like the safest position in a way. To block all things coming in and tight. But you can't stay that way because it's not safe.
Yeah.
Then the punches are going to find their way in,
Yeah.
here and here. So there's a safety in being soft and vulnerable and able to move.
Flexible movement.
When needed.
Yeah.
And recently, I was on a dating website, one of those dating websites, and there was a woman who said, I want a man who will be my rock and da-da-da, and also has guns, so that we can, when stuff goes down, we can hole up inside our fortress with our supplies and defend against any intruders. It's like, wow. So that's like strength through like a rigidity in like this. I thought, wow, if stuff goes down, I want to live in a way that I get a knock at the door instead of like bring my gun out to the door as I open and say, "What do you need, friend?" And that I could be vulnerable enough to say, "Look, we don't have that much, but you're welcome to share," and trusting in the bigger resource out there. And I'd rather die from starvation than live longer with my fingers gripped around this kind of like mentality.
I mean, I was listening to a survivalist, or someone who had basically pondered the sort of the thought experiments of like, post-apocalyptic life, right? And he basically said like the myth of the bunker is just like is a myth, right? Like you can't bunker down through these experiences, because the moment you break your leg, you're effed. You're fucked. And it is actually
with your system.
Yeah, it's actually community that will create the greatest strength in those moments of adversity, and perhaps in as we see the system itself around us that's been built in this Western world, when we see its vulnerabilities, it's actually the community that will allow us to thrive in the future, right? And I think that's been a greater understanding certainly since 2020, when we saw those vulnerabilities in the system emerge, right? Certainly within the circles that I travel, it's been a greater and greater understanding that community and food sovereignty and these sorts of things, where we can actually come together and help one another and support one another, is going to be the greatest beneficial experiences in the case of societal collapse, right? In the case of the system coming down. And
I mean, the ironic thing, morbid joke, but would be, at the end of something going down, whether it's I don't even want to say what it could be, but just like when the smoke clears, so to speak. And observers go out and they find 10 people, in one small space that survived. It was crowded. It was very difficult, but they're smiling. There's a lot of love. They go to another space where they find 2 people, both dead of gunshot wounds. They killed each other because they were so paranoid and protective that, as soon as an argument broke out, their fingers already in the trigger. Like, I don't know. But I think, for me, that exploration, even going to that topic, is a little bit, how do we create a sense of safety? Maybe we're talking about men here, so that we can come together in our forts, and that we are the fort, in a sense, to hold a man who needs to feel safe enough to be vulnerable, so he can take his finger off the trigger, or whatever that trigger is in his body.
I mean, there's this sort of myth perpetuated by the old paradigm that, like, if you were to be in touch with your emotions, then you're suddenly like less of a man, right? Or you become a wussy, you become, by adopting this little bit of feminine energy into your being, you're suddenly weaker, right? And I think it's a fallacy. I think it's that we can embody both strength and vulnerability at the same time. And I think you alluded to there being greater strength coming from vulnerability, right? It's like, from
I
my
think
own,
it's like a fear of permanent weakness and increasing weakness, right?
yeah,
I mean, all of us experience weakness in this lifetime, whether we want to or not. We get sick, you get the flu, COVID, or whatever it was. And
yeah,
you're weak and you need help, somebody even to bring you some water or soup. So you experience that, but there's a sense that we'll get over it.
yeah,
What I think many humans haven't experienced is that you can go into vulnerability, grief, and that you'll actually come out of it. You'll
Yeah.
actually come out. You won't be stuck in it forever.
yeah,
But we don't know that unless we've experienced it, been willing to try going there. And that can make us stronger because then we have choice about that experience. I can experience that and I'm feeling vulnerable, but I'm not, that's not what I am completely, just that vulnerability.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's and also a recognition that it's not, like you don't have to face the world from this sort of like overly vulnerable, overly sharing space of like, oh, I'm going, like I am going to be an open book, right? Like, I think there is space for both boundaries and openness. Yeah. And it's the non-duality of those two, a balancing of those two elements, that works best, I feel like.
Here's a very basic practice of vulnerability that I think creates value for everyone all around. And that is the vulnerability to say, I don't know if I'm right about something.
Yeah.
And the way we can practice that is by suspending our assumptions. So maybe in this conversation, I say, a man needs to be strong in challenging times. And I say that, and I notice in my body, I go like this, and I do this. And a vulnerability would be go, where does that come from? And maybe what I see is like, my dad used to make statements like this. And when he said them as a young kid, first he had fists, so I was a little afraid, like something could happen. I'm making this up, I think. And so I would really listen. This must be the truth. And he would say something like, in hard times, a man needs to be strong. And so like, I noticed that exists in me like truth. And I even just did that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's vulnerable. I'm putting it out there, which means that like I'm willing to question this standard that I have, or this proclamation that when times are challenging, a man must remain or always remain or something. So what it does is it actually starts to open up some strength I didn't know I had, which is a choice around that statement. Like, could there be a challenging time where I'm one who gets to crumble a little bit and trust that I can be held, and trust that I will come back to a strength, and then maybe I'm even stronger than I was before, and a better resource, because I can watch others crumble around me and hold them. I know what that's like, right? Just for sake of example.
Yeah.
So suspending one's assumptions and being willing to look at it is a practice of vulnerability that can lead us to a greater strength, a greater wisdom, by being willing to look at things that we hold as true.
Yeah, I mean, that one in particular has been a theme that I've been exploring over the past couple weeks. Has been, I mentioned this gentleman to you, but I don't know if you've since discovered him. You hadn't last I spoke. David Goggins.
Not yet.
Okay. So he's a Navy SEAL, went through Hell Week 3 times, like just a beast of a man, just like, like his main philosophy is like sharpening this, your mind, your focus, your ability to transcend your own weakness, right? And, there's a lot of admirable aspects to this, and it's not particularly vulnerable, right? Like it's about sharpening so much so there is no vulnerability. So there is no, and like when times get tough, crumbling's not an option. It's strength, you know, and fortitude. And I mean,
There's some times for that.
yeah, I mean he's got such amazing examples of this where he's running his first 100-mile race, right? And he's at mile 82 or 83, and something just kicks in, and it's like he makes it the next 17 miles past this point of I'm done, like I'm done. Where he could have crumbled. I mean, by any excuses, I mean, if you ever were to give yourself an excuse, I think at mile 82 or 83 of a race, and I can't even fathom that myself in my own.
Yeah, it'd be easy to say 82 is pretty damn good. That's 10 times farther than most people I know.
Yeah, and yet instead of crumbling, he went further and kept going, you know? So there is that aspect.
I like to call that like the choice of no choice. It is a choice, but the choice we're making is that there's no choice. I've had this experience, you know, heading down a river in a kayak where all of a sudden I get scared, you know, I hear the rapids coming and I start to look at the shores. It is a choice to eddy out, to get and walk back, you know, with your boat. Excuse me. But then there's like a choice of that's not a choice. I'm going and sit up and paddle. I've been on a mountain bike on a edge trail. This is with a group of buddies I was like determined to keep up with. They're all younger than me, and I'd never gone on this trip. I'm like, I'm gonna go, but I just came out of rehabbing an ACL, and I had a great excuse not to go, but I decided to go. And then we're going down this trail. I've got my knee brace on, and I'm like, F. I look over the edge, and I can see this thin stream of brown. It's the river way below. And it's right there. I mean, and sometimes the edge between the trail, here's the trail, is this wide, and sometimes it's right there. And, you know, I had a brief thought like, I could die, or I should stop, or I should brake harder coming around these bends. And that was like a choice of no choice. There's only one choice, and I'm on this path. I am on this path. That's the only choice. That's the only thing I see. I can stop, take a picture of the river in the canyon later.
So I'm curious, what holding these two ideas in our head, the idea that we can, you know, allow ourselves to crumble, and then at the same time the choice of no choice. How does one determine when it's appropriate to crumble and when it's appropriate to say, I will not back down, I will not crumble?
Yeah, that's a great question. Where does that choice come from? I mean, if you have kids, or just in a leadership position, you know, building on fire, and you look around and everybody's starting to crumble and nobody knows what to do, and you have enough sense of what to do that you go this way. At some point, it's like you got to pick a way, or nobody's getting out. Right. And how do you decide? Is it then, or is like the vulnerability of going like, and it could be another way. I'm not sure. I don't want to be all righteous. Like sometimes you just. And having a daughter, there have been times to say, this is what we're doing, or this is, you know, in the midst of an oncoming crash, coming towards a car. It's like, you know, and then getting out of the car and telling my daughter, run up the hillside, you know, and pushing her up the hillside so she could get out of one other traffic. We were in a canyon, right? So like there are moments on how do we know, like when I think of some of those intense moments, it's just like, it is kind of survival. It's just like, this is the right thing to do. In slower moving things, and I'm in one of those right now in a project that I'm on, it's tapping, for me, it's tapping down into something really deep.
Yeah.
A form of survival in a way. Like, for me, it's about legacy. And I'm in a choice right now where I'm like, there is no choice because I've decided there's no choice.
Right.
I'm going forward with this project and I will succeed. And
Yes.
I will succeed on the timeline I'm claiming. There's no choice. So that's more of a slow moving thing. I hate to say how slow moving because it feels like it has been years in coming to make that kind of choice about something like this.
Yeah.
But for me, it took like getting in touch with something that was just like
a true north.
Yeah, like it felt sounds like clear, claro.
Yeah.
And I can't even tell you all the facts. When I start to go into the facts of why I'm choosing that, it kind of dissipates a little bit.
Right, but it's a felt sense.
I'm choosing this because there is no choice. I know it's built up to that. There is no choice.
Yeah.
Other than this choice.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that has been on the docket of self-exploration for myself over the past week that I've talked about, where it's like, what do I value so much that given extreme adversity, I will not back down in that moment. And through hell or high water, I will push forward, and how do I tap into that as a reservoir of strength, knowing the values that I hold above all else, and how can I reinforce that sensation, that feeling of care and purpose that I have tied to these values. So I am constantly reminded in those moments of extreme adversity that there is no choice.
I think you just answered your own question away. If you rewind the camera on this, what you just did, there was this, how do I remind myself this feeling of, right? You're taking it like there's a, So, and two things come to me as a formula. And as I'm sharing this, there's a remembering in my own body about this. One is making a choice that's based on enough of a feel, enough of a story that we're familiar with that like, this doesn't matter. We may not be feeling it in that moment, but when we make a declaration, like something from nothing in a way, I will do this, I shall succeed. I haven't picked that in my in one of my fields, which is acting. I've been dabbling, and I don't know if now's the time to do that, but I realize that that's coming if I'm going to really go anywhere with it, is a declaration. Where does it come from? Sometimes it gets revealed like in the making of the declaration. Sometimes it feels almost fake, like I will direct a significant film that makes an impact on the men of my era. Like even saying that, like something starts to stir, and I think from the sediment start to come things that are actually fucking true. I could just feel that right now.
Yeah.
And they're like, whoa, not yet. I'm not ready for that. I want to make it find time for that.
Yeah.
Right. But it starts to stir, and in that, a certain fortitude, the structure, starts to come as you were doing this and that, and this is the how we remind ourselves, like, and sometimes it feels like because I said I would, I want to go get in the cold water with you, and I fucking don't. And it's going to take some, I said I would do it. I know this is related to the path and what I'm doing, and clarity, and doing difficult things. And I don't feel like it. All right, I'm doing it because I'm finding, and that's where the breath work, I think, is probably helpful too. That leads up to it.
Yeah.
How?
It feels like adversity training, right? Like that we actually have to train ourselves for those moments in which we are supremely challenged And I feel like the cold water submersion has 100% been my adversity training over the last 3 years that I've been religiously committed to that path. Where it's because once you know that you can transcend weakness in this particular instance, it's like the way is seen in all things, right? Like suddenly the Tao of cold water submersion becomes the Tao of your purpose-driven career, right? Like they apply to one another.
Yeah, it's like the mantra of I do difficult things.
Yes.
I can do difficult things.
Yes.
Is in the bones.
Yep.
I still have a memory of a strike at Burning Man where the crew gets smaller and smaller. You know, people start, I gotta head out, right? So then there's like 9 of us, and then there's like 6 of us, and there's still a fuckload of work to do. And it looks insurmountable. My body's tired. You know, you've been there burning for a week. You know, playing, working hard, building the camp, the whole thing. The body's tired, dance, all the stuff. Not quite enough sleep. And it just looks like impossible, so many things. And we don't leave one little fuzz behind. Like, I see this out and I'm picking it up. It's that kind of detail. It seems endless. And the sun is hot, and then there are dust storms, and then it could rain, and you don't know if you're going to get out of there. So, but I remember that as an experience of like, keep taking the steps.
Yes. Because
it was, you know, for all of us, there were a million little steps. For me, I don't know, 100,000 little little steps. And no sense that you're getting that much closer. Picking up, you know, maybe it's a thumbtack, maybe it's just this. And so it's just moving and doing. And so sometimes I find myself in a place where I'm like, wow, this isn't like 10 more steps and then I'm there.
Yeah.
This is like, I don't know how many, but I can keep going.
Yeah.
And eventually get there.
Yeah. You just took me back to my ascent of Mount Elbert. So Mount Elbert is the 3rd highest mountain in America.
Yeah, it's near Leadville, right?
Yes. Yeah, in Colorado. It's one of the, 14ers. I had never ascended a 12, let alone
it's
a 14.
It's a big, broad mountain.
Yeah. And I remember, so I'm halfway through the ascent, and I'm kind of like done. Like I got invited on this trip from a friend of mine, and I was just sort of haphazardly like accepted the invitation. It sounded fun. You know, I didn't have a strong reason for climbing this mountain. I get about halfway up. We're about 3 or 4 hours into.
We left at 4 or 5 in the morning.
Right? Oh yeah. 5 in the morning is when we woke up, and we're ascending by like 5:30. And I realized that I'm not going to make it up there without a reason why. Because I'm physically hurting already, right? Like
hips are aching.
Hips are aching. Yeah. So I developed that for myself. You know, I said to myself, I'm doing this. It was the sort of declaration. There's no choice, right? I'm doing this now in pursuit of my own self-mastery and my own passing through thresholds. And by the end of this ascent, I'm able to make it 20 paces before I have to stop, take a moment, and then take another 20 paces. And for the last, I'd say the last half hour of ascent, this is the pace at which I'm capable of doing. But it's just, I will not say no. But I, I'm not going to run up this mountain. I'm not capable of doing that. But I am going to take the next 10 steps and take that break that I need after that. And then I'm going to take the next 10 steps. And I eventually made it up this, with, it's up there, there's very little air up there, it's like, I just like.
Plenty of air, just not a lot of oxygen.
Not a lot of oxygen, there you go. But it was through the triumph of making it up that experience that showed me that I could push past what was a threshold of capability, right? And it's through those small steps, right? It's through that I'm going to focus all of my attention and effort on the next 10 steps. And that's it. That's all that exists. I'm not worried about the next 150 or, like that will get me up the mountain. I'm going to focus on the next 10 steps.
Yeah, little summits.
Yes, little summits.
Well, yeah, I mean, the basic declaration and all of this, is like, you've got this.
Yes.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's a pretty powerful one, and it it usually cuts through a lot of our crap about I don't got this,
Yeah.
because that one's always accessible to me.
Yeah.
I don't got this in terms of experience or the strengths or the skills, or there's always some story.
Yeah.
But I don't got this.
Right.
So I got this, and the declaration brings something else alive in the body.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a different feeling.
Yeah.
This Saturday, if you're available, Diallo is coming up from Santa Fe. He's the African dance teacher.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the most challenging fitness things ever done, is dance with him.
Yeah.
And I have a face, probably I don't even want to see what my face looks like. I'm suffering when I'm doing that, because I refuse to do it half-assed, because you can go like that. But I'm not going to do that if I'm going to do it, because I'm a dancer and I just want to do it. So I'm like, reach all the way out and reach all the way up and reach all the way down and kick all the way up and do the whole thing.
Yeah.
And my face probably looks like, hey, like this. I'm like, I'm going to have to quit because I'm just dying. And then I look at Diallo. This is Diallo.
Ear to ear grin.
Ear to ear grin. I'm like, I wonder if that's a part of it.
Yeah.
And so I start to do the ear to ear grin, which feels totally fake. It feels like one more muscle.
Yeah.
That's going to take my energy. I'm holding this up now also. And then things shift.
Yeah.
I'm having a fucking good time.
Yeah.
And I'm just amazed at the difference.
Yes.
Amazed. And that face is a declaration that I'm having a good time. I'm celebrating life.
Yeah.
Just absolutely astounding, the difference. And I've even played with that. I'd go like, okay, I'm going to relax the face for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. Like the physical effect of positivity on our system, right? It's like, it's our vibrational state, right? Like when we welcome in the smile, the ear to ear grin, and when we celebrate, we change the
attitude of gratitude.
Woo!
I say to you, my friend, matitude. Oh, sorry, you're the poet.
Nah, that's I am a poet. I am not the poet, but not the only poet for certain. Yes, it's that. How can we celebrate the adversity? And it brings me to one of the crucial steps in my transformation as a human being, which was the letting go of complaint. When I stopped complaining, both externally and internally, my life changed. Like, suddenly adversity no longer became something that was like this drudgery of a story. And story has such a profound effect on our reality, right? Like we have these subconscious frameworks of story that we frame our reality in, right? Suddenly I am in joy of this strenuous dance that I'm in, and suddenly that's the story I'm in. That's the story I'm inhabiting. The archetype of the joyful dancer, rather than the archetype of the drudgery of of this dance and physical, that is being in the energy of complaint, right? Being like you can hear the body complain with every movement. But when we escape that story and transcend that story into that moment of ear to hear,
love it.
Yes, I'm so grateful for this body I'm in, and I'm loving this movement. And yes, suddenly it all becomes possible. It all becomes not only possible, it's no longer can I get through this, it's I am enjoying my way through this. I am enjoying every moment of this because I am alive and I am experiencing joy and vitality all at once.
I keep coming back to the image and the feel of the fort, and during this conversation I have felt like we're sitting in a fort that we built. We're sitting up against the wall. Like, what is this fortitude?
Yes.
And in this conversation I feel like we've been touching on elements of the fortitude, right? So like gratitude and the element of declaration. Every one of my forts was a declaration. This shall stand. This shall have a roof. This shall have a second floor that we can stand on. It's sturdy enough, without having any idea of how we're going to do it. We never had all the wood that we needed when we started, right?
Yeah.
Or all the logs or whatever it might be. But I'm appreciating sitting in this space with you and feeling the sense of fortitude.
Yeah.
And the elements of, and the sharing of pieces I have, pieces you have, remembering. Most of it is remembering, right?
Yeah.
And for anybody who's listening or any other men we bring together, and we're remembering, like we know these things.
Yeah.
Most of it isn't new information,
right?
But it's remembering that into our members,
bringing it into our body and practice. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that, my friend, feels like a place to land this plane.
Land this plane. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been a great exploration of, what's been very much alive for me. A place of daily inquiry.
Yeah. And congratulations on this new 222 project. We're hearing more about it.
Yeah.
And may the podcasting continue. And I'll let you know more about opening to intimacy. I'm excited about what's coming forth with that.
Yeah.
And always in these projects, I know for me, it's like I'm learning about here. So
yeah,
any course I'm in development or project, we're in the course.
Yes. Yeah. It's a place of exploration, and the beauty of the true teacher is they're learning through the process of teaching. Yeah, and it's reinforcing it.
May the course be with you.
Well, till next time.
Till next time.